I'm going to write an article about how a scam artist makes $60,000 a month on Kindle. And then to take it a step further, I'm going to do the same thing.
What is up, everybody? This is Michael Zakand. I'm joined by my co-host, Simran Sandhu, and today we have a very special guest who's very close to my heart. It is Sam Parr, none other. He's gotten quite famous on the internet lately. He is the founder of The Hustle, which sold to HubSpot for tens of millions of dollars. He is the host of the My First Million podcast, which has been a big inspiration for us here at Our Future and with this show. And he's recently started a private membership community called Hampton, which has also been immensely successful. So we're not as interested in rich guys telling us about their past. We're more interested in rich guys taking us in the time machine and giving us kind of detailed growth hacks for like how they grew their business when they had no credibility, like no money. Like this is you moving to San Francisco. Like, you know, you were in, selling hot dogs before that. You drove on a motorcycle, right? And you started this newsletter called The Hustle. So
Yeah, well, basically, I lived in Nashville. I worked for that TV show American Pickers. And I saw like that guy, Mike Wolf. He's the skinny guy, the tall guy. He's a true entrepreneur. And I was like, oh, that's sick. My parents were entrepreneurs, but I never like looked up to them as I should have because they're your parents. You don't really like think what they're doing is special. But I met this guy and I was like, that's awesome. So I started a hot dog stand. Mm-hmm. I would kill it some days, make $1,000 in cash some days.
Wow.
Other days it was like $100. We call it being hood rich because you just have like a wad of like $5 bills. And then I moved to San Francisco to join Airbnb. It didn't work out because I lied. I had a criminal record and I didn't admit it, and they fired me the day before I started. And then I started a roommate matching app, which was like Tinder for roommates, which is stupid. Obviously, it should have been Tinder for Tinder, right? But we did that for roommates and then sold that. And then I was like, all right, I got to start something new. I don't know what it's going to be. So I started an event called HustleCon, and I made that popular by blogging, which people today, like I've done some of these podcasts where like I go viral because I'm like, oh, I would just start a blog. And then all the young people are like, who the hell reads blogs?
No one blogs anymore.
It's nonsense. I think
you can still make a shit ton of money.
I think
from
that's
them.
nonsense.
Yeah.
I think it's crazy. I think that it's crazy how wrong that like when I say blog, I mean like a newsletter, and then I'll write something on like a webpage. But you make so much more money. And so I had a blog, and I still would blog, and I still do blog. But anyway, that's what I started that to make it popular. It got popular, and then I did the event a bunch of times, and I was like, the event part stinks. Let's just do this content thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, did the blog stuff, turned it into the hustle,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how it happened. But like, I didn't have social media when I started that stuff. I just would post it on Reddit and Hacker News and things like that. And I think our first month at the hustle, I think we had like 800,000 visitors to the website, mostly because of Reddit and Hacker News. And that shit still works.
Well, I think you've talked a lot about this on MFM, right? Like I've heard a lot about the story, but what I want to know is the big inflection point early on where it was maybe one conversation you had or someone who kind of changed your entire trajectory, where it was like, hey, you're doing this Airbnb Tinder thing, but maybe you should look at conferences. How about like, how did the idea for HustleCon even come about? Like, who pointed you in that direction?
I met a guy who originally hosted the first HustleCon, and he did it as like a hobby, and it made like $5,000. And he was like, I'm not doing anything with this domain name or this email list of like 500 people.
Yeah.
Do you want it? And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I've never been to a conference, but yeah, I'll do that. So that's how the idea. So I didn't originally have the idea. Someone else did, but I kind of made it my idea by changing it up. But what conversations did I have early on? Just like moving to San Francisco. So I started a book club. It was called the Anti-MBA. And I hosted a book club every week for 2 years. And the way it would work is I would pick a book once a month. We would read a quarter of the book every week. And I would get in these like experts on the book to come in and like lead a conversation. And eventually like 2,000 or 3,000 people would follow the discussions online, like via an email list. And then I would have like 10 or 20 or 30 people. That's why I met, Sieva? Sieva Kaczynski?
I subscribed to his newsletter.
Yeah, so he runs like a PE firm worth like, I think they have $100 million in assets or in revenue.
Yeah.
I posted to create my book club, I posted ads on Craigslist. And he showed up to the first club meeting, and that's how
That's awesome.
we became friends. That when I became friends with like, there's a bunch of people who are really wealthy in crypto who originally came to my book club. Like that's how I met most of my friends early on. And so I would do this book club, and I just met all these people that were doing cool shit. And it was like basically the way I describe it is like you think of like this building or like this Shure microphone, and you're like, that just has always been there and just always existed. But then I would meet these people who actually were making this stuff, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. I can make anything. And so like I really had a lot of faith meeting a lot of these people that I can do anything I want. A big inflection was at HustleCon. I used to tell people to come, like if their talk was at 3 o'clock, I'd be like, you got to be here at noon for mic check. There's no mic check. That's not a thing at a conference. Like it just works,
This
right?
is the Sam Parr one-on-one they're getting.
Yeah, I wanted to hang out backstage, and I remember being backstage.
He's like captive audience.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't talk to them. I would listen because it would be me. Like, all right, one time it was Casey Neistat. It was the founder of ClassPass. It was the founder of WeWork.
Oh man.
The founder of Away. It's like Away Travel. Jen Rubio, and then like 3 or 4 more people. I'm probably mixing up a couple of the years, but it was like also like the founder of The Athletic, and then like this guy who started Poshmark. You remember Poshmark? And like all these successful people, and we like they were just, it was in a room just like this, and they were like complaining to each other about like they'd be like, hey, are you guys raising funding? Oh, it's rough out there. Did you raise from this person? Man, it's so hard. Or I've got to fire this person, but I'm really afraid to. Or like they would just.
So you're just like a fly on the wall.
I'm a fly on the wall. Like I would
Yeah.
like throw a question. I'd be like, "Hey, what are you guys doing about blank?" Or like, "How are you solving this problem?" And they would just start having these
That's
conversations,
awesome.
and I would just listen. And I'm like, "Oh man, this is like so powerful." Like I remember like the founder of OkCupid. His name's Sam Yagan. He was the CEO of I think Match.com, which is like a multi-billion-dollar thing. He was so nervous to go on stage, and I like got him a bottle of water, and he like snapped at me, and I was like, "Hey man, it's cool to be nervous. Like you want to talk through this, like." And he was like really nervous. And I remember like being able to be around all these like billionaire-ish people. And I was like, they are not 10 times smarter than me. Some of them were, but most are not. But they're like 10 or 20 times more successful than I am. And I just remember being around these people constantly. And it gave me a lot of like faith that I'm like, damn, like it's not the gap of success is huge, but the gap of ability is not significant.
It's funny because you still have that mindset. Like I think your kink in business is surrounding yourself with people who are more successful than you. Like you really get off on that. Like you're doing that with Hampton. You did that with HustleCon.
Yeah,
You've bridged the divide.
It's kind of, but it's like the same thing with like sports. Like, why is it that like a lot of really cool athletes or great athletes come from like one location? There's definitely like some aspect of like they're just maybe more talented or like whatever it is. I don't know, but there's something about being around like greatness that rubs off on you, and I find that to be very fascinating. So I like being around people who like do interesting stuff.
I think what's cool about it is like the real value you provide is being a connector. You bring all these important, powerful people in a room together and just let them do their thing. And
well, I
let the
take pride in
conversation
that.
very organic.
You guys are that, right? You guys emailed me in 2020.
Yeah. Maybe 2020.
Did you guys ever tell the story about on this? So basically, like he had Michael at universityofmichigan.edu or whatever, like, and like I remember doing a call with you, and you were in a dorm room, I think.
Wait, can I tell you the actual story?
What?
So I was doing a podcast before I started the short form TikTok shit, and I wanted to have you on because I knew of the hustle. And like I saw you're on Twitter, I was like, this guy's fucking sick. It's like he's riding motorcycles, like he seems like kind of a badass. I also think that's the reason why your personal brand is as big as it is because like you're not your typical Silicon Valley dude. Like people look back at that photo of you with like that little pot belly and the tank top in Nashville with that shitty ass sign. And it's like, dude, this guy's fucking weird and crazy.
Well, it resonates too, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're
Got a guy next door vibe.
Yeah, but I wanted you on my pod, so I said some crazy shit, you know, and you respond to that like it's your own language. It was some hustlery. I'm a young kid. I'm trying to meet people. It's like, oh, you know, that's your language. You did the same with HustleCon, and you're like, sounds cool. That's all you said. Sounds cool. Period. And then you left your number was in your email signature.
Yeah.
Anyways, flash forward.
Did you start texting me?
I did. I flashed forward. So this is right when the hustle deal was closing. It hadn't yet closed. I was on my way to the Mojave Desert to Joshua Tree. And I was just obsessed at that time with how do I build a media company? Like I was doing a podcast like one-on-one, And I was like, this is so hard to grow. Like, how do I build a media company that's more than just a person? Like, I want to have a brand. And I would just pretty much listen to every podcast that you'd been on, and same with Austin and Alex, because I was so inspired to like make business fun, right? Like the hustle had. And I ended up just texting you and asking you questions. And I was like, hey, I want to do this. Like, I want to build this big media company. And we ended up chatting a little bit. And you wouldn't come on the pod because you were like, oh, like this deal's closing. I just like can't talk about it.
Yeah, I was stressed at that point.
Yeah, and then, fast forward to a stroke of luck when I just decided to listen to MFM one day. I was an OG listener, so I listened to MFM probably before like all these other mofos. Like literally everyone is hopping on the train now, but like I was there in the beginning, It's like funny, like you're the guy that were first and you're like, oh, okay, and they had the viral cuts competition, and that, is that how me and Simi built the agency, right? Which was that first deal of like 5K, whoever makes us viral. I was like, let me turn that into 5K a month revenue, right? And
yeah,
then we got
basically, the
HubSpot.
listener, we had a contest where we said, just like anyone listening, make clips and post them on your handle. You can own it, and just use this hashtag so we can track it.
Yeah.
And we'll just randomly pick cool videos that we like, and we'll give you $5,000. And you guys did it. I think your videos got like 10 million views or something.
I remember the LeVar Ball.
No, that was later.
The clip.
It was the subreddit, the Fat Fire.
That one was a good one too.
It was Mr. Beast with the Squid Game.
Yeah.
So those popped. Like I just knew, because I was in a position, right? Like I was already working on short form video. Like I was surrounding myself with talented editors, and it just like the light bulb went off as a young entrepreneur to be like, okay, like I know these guys. I already have his phone number, so I know I can win the contest by just being like, hey, I'm winning, so no one will forget about me. And I knew a video editor who could do it. So it was like I just had the right pieces in place, and it all goes back to just like getting started somehow. And
Well,
like
yeah,
you'll be
but-
ready for an opportunity when it comes, right?
But it's cool, like, I'm not old, but I'm older than you guys. But so I'm old enough now that I enjoy finding like the 20, 21,
Yeah.
22-year-old people. And I think it was the same thing when I started in Silicon Valley. It was like people were like, oh, you're young and you're getting
Yeah.
after it. That's cool. We'll give you a shot. But yeah, it's cool to like, I call it collecting people. I think I'm not like a religious person, but there's this cool line in the Bible where Jesus is trying to recruit Peter and Paul, and they're fishermen. And he goes, I'm going to make you fisher of men. And I remember like hearing that line. I was like, oh, that's sick. I'm going to be like, because I don't have that many skills, but I can collect people.
Yeah, you're really good at that.
So I'm like, I'm just going to collect people and be a fisher of men and find interesting people.
Yeah.
And that's usually how it's worked for a lot of the career. But when you're around those people, it like demystifies achievement, whether it's sports or art or making money.
I mean,
Well,
me and Samir are in the same boat.
yeah.
Like he was doing interviews on his pod, like before we even knew each other. Like he was talking to the CEO of Verizon and shit. I was talking to like, the CEO of Chipotle and stuff. And it's just like, wow, like these are just normal people like
Well,
chatting on Zoom.
The key was like you're giving them a platform, right? Like, do they want to have a
Yes.
conversation with for 30 minutes with a kid? Like, they've got tons of other things to do. But if it's like, hey, it's a podcast and this is going to be distributed and you can make it sound cooler and bigger than what it is, well, it's like, okay, well, I can see the ROI on doing something like this.
Yeah. The way that I describe like that period of living in San Francisco for almost 10 years was like, I had bad eyesight when I went there. And then I put eyeglasses on, and it's like, oh my God, the world is so clear. Like you
Yeah.
understand like how different things
Is
are
that
built.
a metaphor or you actually had bad eyesight?
It's a metaphor, right?
It's a metaphor, and
Yeah.
I do wear glasses.
Well, your myopia was alcoholism, right?
I like that was my
That was your
that was my
crutch.
drug of choice.
Yeah.
Yes, but I like being around these people. You're like, oh, this is how the world works. This is cool, and you can. I'm like, I can do anything actually if they can do it, and so it was very inspiring.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask you, you guys probably get crazy inbound. Like anytime we talk about how we were doing clips for you guys, people would just like look at us starry-eyed because they're like, oh,
Yeah.
you guys work with Sam and Sean? Like, so I imagine the
well,
kind
'cause we ignore everything.
Yeah, well, that's what I was
Now,
going to ask.
I think the door's closed now.
It's not closed. I mean, every once in a while someone
Yeah.
gets through, but even then, like, because the hustle when we sold it had close to 2 million subscribers, and every once in a while, my email would be in it. Like, for
Yeah.
example, a lot early on, the welcome email came from my personal email. And so you would just, your inbox just has 200 or 300 unread emails at any given point. And I also used to put my phone number out there. It's like what like a young business person does. They're like, oh, like they'll tweet or it's like, oh, I'm sorry you're having a bad experience. Here's my phone number. Call me or whatever. You know, like that's like a cute thing to do. so my phone number was out there, and so I just get
They were calling.
yeah. And so I just got by default, and usually people just want something that helps them and not you, and so I just by default ignore everything. But yeah, we ignore everything.
So how do people cut through the noise? I mean, this is one story on how we did it, but like you're getting a shit ton of inbound. What are some like interesting things you've seen or just crazy emails that you've gotten where it's like, okay, this kid has some chutzpah, like I'm gonna take a chance on him.
Well, typically when they email you ideas on what they're going to do, that goes straight to junk. It's far more interesting where it's like, I've already done X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Here's the website, and here's the results. So like just really interesting and good results stick out. When they ask like, I'm willing to work for you for free, I'm like, man, now I got to think about something for you to do. That's just too much work. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I'd rather you just tell me what problem I need solved and then actually give
And
me a
then do it for
sample of
free.
how it's
Yeah.
solved. And I'll pay for it too. But like, if you just like show me some type of a website that show like is what you're thinking, and then maybe I'll be interested. The hard part is figuring out who to trust. So I have a joke, but it's not really a joke, is I just say no new friends. Like I just by default I don't trust you and I don't want to be your friend. And so, like, figuring out how to like break through that is a challenge.
I respect that about you though. Like once you actually like lock on to someone, like you're super loyal for.
Yeah, I'll be really loyal to you, but like by default I'm like I think you're lying to me. You're trying to sell me something and I don't believe you.
Yeah.
And so you have to figure out how to like prove that you're a trustworthy person.
So we've never worked together directly. What are your thoughts on second chances? Like, do you give people a pretty long leash in terms of like,
Second chances?
yeah, like,
No.
no. So it's like they fuck up, they're done.
Yeah, I have a pretty pessimistic view, which isn't entirely true, but I default to it, which is people don't change. And so, and I also believe that the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So like if you're late to meetings, I think you're sloppy. If you're so like, or if you lie to me one time, you're gonna lie again. So, but people do change sometimes. I changed, but most people don't. So I kind of default to
So
it.
you're a skeptic by nature then.
Yeah, and if I catch you lying, I think you're gonna lie all the time.
That's why you don't fuck with crypto and these NFT motherfuckers.
I don't like, I don't like a lot of them, but I think that but like a lot of really successful people, probably myself included, we have done like some shady things when we first started out on the internet. So like you can change, but like I think if you are dishonest once, you will likely be dishonest often in the future.
So like something that, we all share is like we run, with our Futures running a viral media brand. You were doing the same with Hustle. And you were very involved
we
in
weren't
editorial.
we weren't crazy viral like you guys.
I know,
yeah.
but we had we had the short form platform to exist. You were getting viral on the internet. How do you think about like twisting stories and headlines and stuff? Like you're really good at that, and it's something that I really enjoy doing. I believe these days you have to trick people into being educated. So how do you think about that and the ethics around that clickbait?
I think that you want to tell the truth, but the best possible version of it.
I like that.
I think like a cool thing about storytelling is like you can change like for example, let's say that I want to tell you a story about like entertaining about someone told me something really funny and we're in a car ride or something and like there's 3 people in the back and it's me in the front and then someone else in the driver's seat and they tell a story. I don't need to like tell you like who was sitting in that car, or I could even tell the story as if it was just me and this other person like having a private conversation. That's not a meaningful although that's not like the whole truth, that's not a meaningful difference in the story. So I think it's okay to do some things like that. But I think that people, particularly your guys' age, have a pretty high bullshit detector, and the best way to circumvent that is to not bullshit. And so I try my hardest not to bullshit too much, but I think you can sensationalize the truth.
Yeah.
But I try my hardest not to like bullshit too much.
Yeah.
Because I think that you'll lose trust, but I think that you can do crazy shit to grab people's attention. The thing that with what is so clickbait means it's bait. What is bait? Bait is when you are tricking someone and giving them something that is not true or that is a fake thing. So like I'm tricking someone I'm getting an animal to come over by like putting a fake duck out there in order to
Yeah.
attract other ducks.
Yeah.
Just make sure that duck ain't fake. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like just whatever it is, it could be,
I love how I use that analogy. It's like duck hunters.
yeah,
South,
like it could be
Duck
clicky.
Dynasty.
It could be clicky. Don't make it bait. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I can get their attention, but I gotta give them the goods too.
Okay.
Well, it's
okay.
funny too, like the whole fake it till you make it mentality. Like if you can pull it off, everyone commends you. But as soon as you don't, you're like a fraud, right? There's like no
there's
in between.
That's why like a lot of like entrepreneurs saw that Billy McFarland thing, and he took it. The Fire Festival guy, he took it too far. But a lot of people are like, "Damn, I've been there." Where like I was lying,
Yeah.
and I didn't think it was gonna end up as a lie because I thought I could pull it off, but he took it too far. But a lot of people have been in that situation, I think.
So I want to go back to the founding days of the hustle. So you scaled it a lot through like some of these posts on Reddit News, Hacker News.
Yeah, well,
Tell me
yeah.
some more growth hacks for like growing audience onto the newsletter.
So basically, our first either 100 or 150,000 subscribers came in year one. And the way it worked is I would write these blog posts that I thought would like go quote viral or rank high in a particular subreddit. So for example, there was a subreddit called Soylent, and I think it had 50 or 100,000 people. And I thought with a high likelihood that if I lived or if I had someone live on Soylent for 30 days, I'm like, I think that will rank high in that subreddit.
Yeah.
And also, I think people who drink Soylent would consume our information. And so I was like, all right, great. Therefore, we're going to have someone live on Soylent for 30 days. I'm going to post it there in 5 other spots as well, and it's going to rank high. And then they would, we would get 500,000 or 1 million people coming to our website, and I had a really good pop-up that would grab people's attention, and let's say 3% of them or 30,000 people would subscribe to the hustle. That's awesome, and I could do that once a month. Another thing that we did, well, here's another article. The very first article we ever wrote. Have you read the article that we wrote years ago about Kindle?
Mm-mm.
So basically, I knew this guy named Patrick who had a thing where it started this way and then he became more legit. But basically, he would sort of plagiarize books on how to like sleep with women. And this guy was like, he like wasn't a player.
Did
like
you
this
read
guy,
them?
No, but
What is it called? Like the gentleman's.
Well, I don't remember even what they were called, but if you Google the Hustle Kindle, you'll find it. But he would basically find books on how to like hook up with girls that ranked high in Kindle, and he would have someone in the Philippines sort of rewrite it so it wasn't total plagiarism, and then he would get a clickbait looking title and image for the cover of the book, and then he would hire these people to quote buy it and review it. And I was like, this is horribly scammy and unethical, but it's wildly interesting. I'm going to write an article about how a scam artist makes $60,000 a month on Kindle. And then to take it a step further, I'm going to do the same thing. And so we did some research and we're like, which categories of Kindle have the highest liquidity, meaning I can rank, like there's tons of buyers. And it happened to be romance novels. And so I was like, great, let's write this article about Patrick and explain what he does. And people are going to doubt us. And then the next week, like we're going to put in the article, next week, we're going to prove this is true by doing it. Subscribe here. And then the next week, we plagiarized, in 1 week we did this, we plagiarized this book. We called it Captivating Claire. And we found that like there's this weird niche of like people who like want to have sex with military people. There's also this weird like niche of romance novels of women who want to have sex with like werewolves. I guess that's a thing with that movie.
Oh.
Isn't it called like, what's that movie with that Patrick guy?
Oh, isn't it the one with Michael J. Fox?
I don't remember, but there's some movie where a vampire or a wolf.
Oh, you're talking about Twilight, bro.
Yeah, that thing. So it's like, it's weird when you say it, but like there are movies like that. But anyway, we plagiarized this book. We got these people in the Philippines to buy it and rank it, and then we released it, and we became like #1 in a particular niche for romance novels, and we wrote about doing it. And it turns out the book that and then we posted that in like reddit.com/ like self-publishing authors, and people got so mad at us, particularly like these stay-at-home moms who love this category of novels. They thought that we were mocking them. We weren't mocking them. We were just happened to choose that genre. And we were kind of making a point that like you shouldn't trust everything on Kindle and how it's kind of bullshit in a lot of cases to be a bestseller and charge speaking fees.
Yeah.
And that became a hit. Turns out the book that we copied was owned by Harlequin. Do you know what Harlequin is?
Publisher?
Yeah, have you heard of it?
I've heard. I know they compete with.
I
Random
hadn't
House.
even heard of it.
They compete with Penguin.
Dude, it's like a 2,000 person like publishing company. It's like the third or fifth largest publisher in America.
Yeah.
And they emailed us and they're like, we're gonna take you to court and sue you for making a mockery and for plagiarizing us. And I emailed them back and I was like, I'm sorry, we were just making a point that had nothing to do with you. And they're like, look, we get it. We were just trying to scare you. Just write a post saying you're sorry for doing this and take the book off Amazon and it's all good. And so anyway, that was our very first post, the first week or 2 weeks we launched The Hustle.
Really?
Yes.
Because I think the moment I knew that me and Simi, like we had made it in media, was when we got a defamation suit from a billionaire.
Well, it doesn't feel like you're making it at the time, but if
But
you
it
get
means-
that at least means in the case of a media company, you're getting eyeballs.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we would do crazy stuff like that the first year. Like, for example, another thing was this was in 2016 when we launched. Psychedelics weren't as popular, and I had a friend that would take them a lot to like calm his nerves. And we wrote about how he bought them and how he took them microdosing. That went viral, and we did crazy stuff like that.
That's so Vice. That's such a Vice playbook.
Yeah, and it worked, and that's how we got like our first 100 to 150,000 subscribers. And we would just do crazy shit like that every week or so.
I know Vice nearly bought you. We actually nearly were in some conversations with them as well.
You gotta bleep out that name, Vice. I don't know if I'm in. Well, maybe we could say I don't know if I'm.
I think you've said it publicly before.
Have I?
Yeah.
They were interested in buying us, and I'm very, very happy we didn't do it.
Because it was all going to be stock, and that stock is worth, nothing.
It's worth zero.
It went to
Also,
zero.
the way that they
We'd all be unemployed.
the way they organized their company was very sloppy. We didn't actually get that far down with them because it's like this is just a horrible culture fit. This is a bad fit, and I'm very happy we worked out with HubSpot. But most media companies are shit shows.
I think a lot of media companies are actually like, it's kind of easy to get an acquisition in media because if you're the new thing on the new platform, these older legacy companies have an immediate interest. Because like we were nobodies just making these videos and getting a lot of views, but when we brought that storyline to like, we brought it to Forbes and we brought it to News Corp and we brought it to Vice and we brought it to Vox. Like,
Does News Corp give you guys a
those
meeting?
CEOs hit us back.
We met with News Corp. Did they give you guys a meeting?
Well, do you know that they nearly?
I don't know what I'm allowed to say, but I would imagine so that is true.
Yeah, I mean that's Rupert Murdoch 101.
Yeah, selling to a media company is a bit of a challenge. It's just you're on a grind. It's on a grind of like more eyeballs constantly.
More eyeballs.
And I always thought when we sold, this was before I knew about HubSpot. In my head, and this was before we knew that WeWork wasn't what we thought it was, but I was like, a WeWork should buy us. I was like, a company that is selling something, that would be way better.
Yep.
And it's a significantly better place to work, I think. Not always, but often. And then HubSpot called us, and I was like, oh, this makes perfect sense. And so I would rather sell to I think Coinbase had a blog post saying if you Google like Coinbase, Medium, Brian Armstrong, The Hustle, you'll see this article. They're like, this is a really cool strategy. We like this. And I think I prefer that, but both can work.
I think we would agree. Like, we talk about this a lot. Like, for us, I feel like it's harder to build a standalone media giant. Like, you're better off being a supplemental piece to a different kind of company, whether it's D2C, SaaS, whatever.
Yeah, it's more
be a
fun.
media arm.
Like if you go to like, are you a car guy too?
Not as much as him.
So I'm a car person. I'm a car enthusiast. If you watch car content on YouTube, dude, the best YouTube car content comes from not all entirely, but some of the best comes from like there's Car Wow. You know what Car Wow is?
Yeah.
They're like a marketplace for cars. Their YouTube channel, I think, is the best. And then there's like Haggerty. They sell insurance.
Yeah, I'm about to go to an event by Haggerty in Monterey Car Week in 2 weeks.
Oh, really? I think they've got the best car stuff.
And doesn't Haggerty own? No, Hearst owns Bring a Trailer.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah. And Hearst is awesome. But I think some of the best car content comes from people who aren't in the media business because they have way more money to spend. And when you don't give a shit, you make better stuff.
Yeah.
And then I think it's easier to have a product that people love and then to build media around it than it is to have media and then build a product around it. I think the first one's significantly easier. And if you have that revenue driver that is non-media stuff, to throw media on top of it is way easier.
So it's interesting you say that because I remember a tweet you just recently posted where it was, bless you, where it was around media companies trying to build a data or tech product
I think a data product could work with media.
But tech, you're not as bullish.
No, I'm not, because so basically there's a lot of media companies out there that want to create products. And it's not impossible, but I think that doing more than one thing is very challenging, even when you're big. But B, I think it's significantly more challenging to have a media team and then go out and build a tech product. It
Right.
rarely has it happened. Sometimes it's been attempted many times, but I think it's incredibly challenging because the skill sets are just really different and the culture is really
Right.
different.
So you think it's a mismatch within the team itself? Like they're just not capable of building said tech product. Like, do you
In
think
most cases.
Do you think that you could bring in an experienced tech person and have them go develop this?
It's a bit of a problem because you have competing interests. So at the Hustle, like for example, we had this lady who worked for us named Katie. I love Katie. Katie Huff's her name. She was awesome. She was our best seller. There was a time where one of her clients, she probably booked like $2 million in revenue in 1 year. There was a time when one of her clients was this big name, big shot, and they advertised with us, and I said something dumb in the email, and they wanted to bail. I don't give a fuck about that advertiser. But I cared about her.
Yeah.
I didn't want her. She was going to lose money because that person was bailing, and I had to think like, okay, what do I care more about? Like this ego and this concept of like I'm going to say whatever the hell I want, which should be true, but I'm hurting her, and so that you're like at a conflicting interest there. And so it's the same way where if you have a limited amount of eyeballs or ad space, are you going to promote your own product? And that was the thing that we had at Trends. We had Trends. We had a subscription product. So there was competing interests there. Whereas I think if you're, let's say that you are a tech or a product company, and then you want to, I don't know why you would, but let's say you want to sell advertising space, it's a little bit easier to like, be like, hey, we have this extra stuff, this extra space that you could sell versus we only have this amount of space. It's all sold out because our ad sellers need to get their commission. Now we're going to promote our own thing. Now that hurts the ad sales and it hurts our salespeople. That is a little bit of that's a hard thing to pull off, I think.
Yeah, well, I just think we're going to see a lot less like media companies get acquired. Like, I just think the media company is like a thing of the past, and like I'm really proud that we were able to like do that because I grew up admiring you, Alex, Austin, and you guys, and I want to do the same thing, and I did it on a much smaller scale. But I just think brands in media are just a thing of the past. Like, no longer are there going to be these like outlets and publishers. It's much more obviously like creators and stuff.
I think that's too much of an absolute. Like, I don't like when people say like
a generalization.
A generalization would say, this is the future. It's like, no, both can exist. Mm-hmm. I do think that some of these brands, like a Hearst or a Fox, they're always going to exist, and they're always going to be, I don't know how big they'll be, but they'll always be a fairly big business. I think that like Meredith, have you guys heard, you know what Meredith is?
Yeah.
Meredith, look up Meredith. It's funny you don't know this because they make $2 billion a year, I believe. They're based out of, I think, Minnesota.
Oh, this is the magazines?
Yeah, they're magazines. Yeah. They own Martha Stewart's shit. I think they probably also own Oprah or O Magazine or worked with her. If you look, I'm sure they've done something with like Jessica Simpson. Like it's basically middle America women read their stuff. Mm-hmm. And like you're always going to find someone who can appeal to like what you just said is a very tech coastal viewpoint, but there's 350 million people in America. There's a lot of room for everyone to.
Well, you talked about that other guy, right, who does a airplane magazine and then uses it to sell hangar space.
Oh,
that's a great one.
Craig Fuller. So this guy named Craig Fuller. So he's one of the examples of people who have done what I said most people can't do. He started, what's this thing called? Craig Fuller's his name. Freightwaves. So Freightwaves.
I forgot it was the Freightwaves guy, but that was a media company in shipping.
I know, but listen, it's the same guy who did both.
Okay.
So he did Freightwaves, which was basically the Bloomberg playbook. So they created software. I think the software helps shipping companies figure out where their products are going. I don't remember exactly, but it's an enterprise software. And then to make that popular, he created, I think, originally a blog that did well, and then he's turned into a full-blown media company. And if you Google Freightwaves revenue, they reveal all the revenue, and it's something like $30 million in enterprise software revenue, $30 million in like advertising and shit like that. His side project was that he bought I think airplane.com or pilot.com, like some legacy magazine, like a blog, but also a hard magazine. And then he went and bought a bunch of real estate in Tennessee, I believe. And he turned it into like a country club, but in the middle of the country club, instead of a golf course, it's an airstrip. And then they have an airplane hangar. So if you're like an airplane enthusiast, you could spend like something like $400,000 and buy this nice home, and then you have your monthly dues. Instead of a golf course, you get access to this airstrip, and you can store your plane there. And he's using the magazine to drive sales to that thing. Now, I purposely said, or at least I hope I did, in most cases, I think starting with media and going to a product is impossible. There's a lot of examples of proving me wrong. I just like in most cases that's true. But then you meet a guy like Craig, and he can pull it off. Another one is Blockworks.
Yeah.
Blockworks is started by my good buddy Jason. He's pulling it off. But there is definitely a difference between an information product, of which Blockworks is selling, and like a proper tech product.
Yeah.
Like I think an information product that has a tech component, there are carryovers.
Yeah.
Like a data company. There are carryovers, I think. And the same team in the same culture probably could do both. I'm just saying in general, I'm making a generalization. It's very challenging.
Well, the Freightwave story is funny. So we're in the process of working on a deal together because they have a massive podcast network. So
Do they?
Yeah. Tons
so
of
wild.
podcasts. And it's such a funny thing because when I was asking them about it, they were like, yeah, we just kind of look at this as a two-part business. It's like we have this tech infrastructure aspect, and then the other half is media.
Are they bootstrapped?
They're not bootstrapped. They raised
So-
a shit ton of money.
They did.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're. I think they are. What's the phrase? An exception to the rule.
Yeah.
Some crazy, extraordinary people can pull it off.
Well, I want to ask you. So, the biggest pro of building a media company is also the biggest con. And what I mean by that is there are virtually no barriers to entry in today. Like anyone can rip each other off. People have tried to do it with us. People have tried to do it with you guys.
And done it successfully.
Yeah. Sure. So what I want to know is like other industries where you think a young person can go succeed in, especially if it's their first business. Let's take into account they're not some tech genius. They're not big software guys. They haven't been coding their whole life. So what are some low lift things that they should be focusing on or emerging trends they can look at?
Well, obviously content is there, but
Outside of media.
outside of content, I think one of the biggest regrets that I have, and it's not necessarily a regret because I don't think I'm built that way, but I think like learning a skill set like development or maybe even better design.
Design.
Yeah, if you can learn design, I think you can crush it. And so like I wish I had the ability to. So most everything that I make on the internet, I don't actually make it. I'm able to hire people to do it. I wish I had that ability to do it, and I could create a landing page that looks sick.
To design a website as good as Hampton's or as good as Viral Cuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't have that ability. If I had that ability to do that, I could definitely make like a mock-up of what a software company could look like, and I could cold call people and get them interested. And I think I could get pre-sales or at least enough interest that I could use that to promise people I'll pay you eventually.
Interesting.
That's a great
that's a good
point.
idea.
I wish I had the ability to do design. I don't. I can write, which is maybe equally as important. But if you could do design or like even just some of these no-code tools, I can't even work Webflow. I don't even know how to do it.
It's interesting because you're like tapping into the creative part of your brain. Like I'm taking your course right now, the Copy That. Love that shit. But
copythat.com.
Yeah.
I gotta give it. That's just like a little
Plug
thing I
it
made
out.
on the side. It's fun, right?
yeah, it's totally fun. It was like make your writing sing. I was like, well, duh. Like
Yeah.
makes a ton of sense, but you just don't think about it.
I mean, I've
that
had
way.
people come to me, they're like, I literally wrote out all your videos and like your stories by hand.
Yeah.
Because that's what Sam Parr said, to try and learn
It works.
the way
It's very effective.
that you tell stories.
I do it all the time.
Yeah.
It works. I still do it all the time. I'll write things out by hand. So basically, for the listener, it's called copy work. Like in the 1700s, 1800s, and up until like 1920 or so, it was a very common way of learning how to write. You just copy other people's stuff. It's the same way when you like do music, right? You don't typically write your own song right away. You learn Jingle Bells, and then you learn like some rock shit that you like, and then maybe pop stuff, and then eventually you're like, oh, I like this part, this part, this part. Then I can combine it, and you see the patterns of what works, and you make your own eventually. The same way with writing. So if you want to be a good comedy writer, you can take like your favorite genre of comedy, whether it's stand-up or movie scripts. You can write it by hand. You can do it with Catcher in the Rye, whatever, if you want to learn how to be a novelist. And you see the texture in it, and it's a really easy way to learn. I think it's the most effective way to learn.
I know we've talked a lot about the cons of building a media company, as we just did, but just to go back to that, the biggest pro, like personal brand, I am blown away by the personal brands that you, Alex, and Austin have from doing Morning Brew and Hustle. Is it just because like those were outlets that everybody in the tech industry like read?
Well,
Like your personal brand mismatches the thing that you guys built.
you mean like
You're more famous than a lot of billionaires,
Yeah,
a lot of $100
yeah.
million guys. Like,
which, by the way, I would trade that fame for that
why,
success.
why do you
Hand
think,
me the money, baby.
why do you think there's such a mismatch between the personal brand and the
things.
business you worked on?
A few things. One, I don't want to like make this sound bigger than it is, because ultimately newsletters is like a very tiny niche in a small niche. But we were like pioneers in that. We
Yeah.
didn't invent it, but we helped pioneer it. So it was like us, the Skim, Morning Brew. It was like a very popular thing, and we were like 5 years ahead of where a lot of people were. Like when I pitched the Hustle to someone, it was a CEO of a really popular media company that I'll tell you afterward. You definitely know who they are. They're multi-billion dollars. He was like, this is a tiny idea, and it will never make more than $1 million a year. And that's obviously nonsense. We sold early, but Morning Brew is now close to $100 million a year in sales. We definitely could have done that too. So he was wrong. But a lot of people dismissed it. So the fact that we were pioneers in this little tiny niche, that is interesting. Number two, by default, media, to be successful, you need eyeballs. So that is one of the reasons why we're popular. And number three, it's just fucking cool. Like people on the outside, even when I'm on the inside, I'm like, this is pretty dope. Like this is awesome. Even though there's a lot of pain in the ass stuff, it's sick just to make content.
Media is awesome.
And there's a reason why rich people, when they get really rich, Jeff Bezos wants to buy the Washington Post because it's like, it's sexy and it's cool. And so not a lot of people have that skill set.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, is because everyone literally can write or make a video, they think that they are good at it, and then they realize, shit, this is actually hard. And so they're like, this is like a sexy thing that you're doing, even if the returns are smaller than some other industries.
Yeah.
It's sexy. I don't know how to do it. I wish I could, and I want in because I think Dan Blazarian, you know, that crazy dude, he's got the book, and he's like, I'm rich and I'm famous, and I can tell you that being famous gets me laid way more than being rich. And it's like the same thing with like media, which is like, even if it's like not as lucrative as some other things, it's definitely sexier. And so even the rich people admire it.
And that's why me as a 20-year-old kid wanted to get into the industry.
Yeah, it's
There's
like
a lot of vanity at
it's
play.
like the rock star version of like our nerd world.
It is the rock. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
It's like, it's cool, even though like the music,
Well, it's also-
the guy who owns the label makes way more money.
It's just because all these tech guys don't understand distribution, and now they're like, Messiah, you know?
Yeah, and also most people, their second time starting a company, they realize that marketing and distribution is equally or more important as the product itself, and they're like, oh my God, I wish I learned that skill set.
Yep.
I'm also curious about how you think about new opportunities. And what I mean by that is you get your first win. And what I've seen is that people who have successfully started and exited a company or done very well with it, it almost feels like they're way more intentional about the second company they start. And one of the reasons is that they just don't want it to fail, or they don't want it, to have egg on their face, right? And so I think the way they look at new opportunities is way different. So what were some of the factors you thought about? Obviously, Hampton is well primed to being this huge success, but...
So when I started The Hustle, my goal was to make $20 million after taxes by the age of 30. The reason I set that number was because I met someone who was really wealthy, and they just told me that number is like, you're good. And so I just made it up. And so the second company that I started, I think that basically most people don't focus enough on doing one or two things really well. Instead, they spread themselves quite thin. My second company, or my second big company, Hampton, it was more so like, I may or may not ever sell this, probably won't. But what can I start that can last like many decades, that can grow every year, more likely than not. But even if it doesn't grow, I would love it. And it's in, you guys know what ikigai is? Have you heard of ikigai? It's this like Japanese concept where there's like, imagine almost like a Venn diagram that looks like Olympic rings, where it's like what you're good at, what you love doing, what the world really wants, and what they're willing to pay for. And the goal is to find something right there in the middle, and that's like your mission. Because if you have like something you love to do, but it doesn't make any money, that's just an expensive hobby, right? If you have like something that makes a lot of money, but you don't really enjoy doing, then that's just a shitty job. And so the goal is to find something right in the middle. And I remember after I sold the hustle, I took roughly 2 years, sometime between like 6 and 18 months. I forget the exact time. But like I started Hampton about 2 years after I left the hustle, or sold it. And I was like just researching like crazy. I called it like I was scheming. I was like, I'm going to research like crazy. I'm going to find something that's hopefully right in the middle of that Venn diagram. And I wanted to like nail that because I know that if you find something that you really enjoy doing and is lucrative and all that, it can last a long time. And what you see, I sold the hustle in year 4, so I barely saw it. But in like the more you go, if you do a good job of doing it, things compound and like real value will happen like every decade or so. And so I was like, what can like compound over many years of time? And it's going to do that because A, it's a good business model. It's a product people want. I'm willing to do it for decades. And so I was really careful about that. And I just think that most people, they don't really focus. They're not, when you're just starting out, I think just get your fucking win.
So
Get the win.
you support what we did, and that was
Well, I don't know if you define that as your win or not. I don't know how you defined if that, what it depends how you defined it. But I think that like get some type of financial security, get that nut, and then I think that's an appropriate thing to do. Is just like, dude, whatever you can do to get your first win and have like some breathing room. Yeah, it's totally worth it. But then when you can, after that, if you're able to think about what can last many, many, many decades. Because a lot of times you can create a significant amount of value over 20 years, way more than 5 years.
Yeah, but you're different than what I've seen other founders in your exited founders in the industry do. Like they're trying to spread themselves thin. They're trying to do a million things.
I think that's a
They're
huge
trying to
mistake.
be ultra leveraged. They're trying to do a VC fund. They're trying to find the next big thing. You went all in on one idea that you thought was great, and I think that's different from what your peers of similar net worth and personal brand have done.
I think they're wrong. I mean, who am I to say? As long as they're happy, they're right. But if I had to make a bet that in 10 years, will they wish that they could have focused on one thing? I would think they would.
So
But I don't know. I mean, some people have, like one of my great friends, his name's Sahil Bloom, his lifestyle, he fucking loves his lifestyle. So he probably doesn't want to focus on one thing because he's happy. So in that regard, he's winning. He's made the right decision.
Right.
But for other people, like I think Austin Reef and I are very aligned where we're like, we want to start a real company that we actually work inside of, where we build a culture, where we actually hire people. I think that has a significant higher likelihood of lasting for a very long time. And money is not my main driver, but I think it will create a significant amount more value than all these other projects combined.
It goes back to an interesting quote by like Steven Schwartzman that I just read in his biography, which was, small goals and big goals are equally hard to achieve. So you might as well shoot for something that your effort will be commensurate to the reward.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that I think that for some like really big, like I didn't want to raise VC because I didn't want that pressure. So like one could say like, well, my goal isn't big enough because I haven't raised venture capital or something like that. But we were lucky; we had money to self-fund it. But I think that I would add to his point, but he's more successful than me, so he's probably smarter. But there's like this point of like, what lifestyle do you want, and can you make all that align?
Has your philosophy changed where it was you wanted your nut, right? So it was build to exit, right? Get some substantial capital at your disposal, to now building to hold for forever, for a very, very long time.
100%, it has changed.
Okay, and what caused that mental shift for you?
Having money.
Having money.
Yeah, because I know that at a baseline, I'm good. Anything else is just upside. But I definitely don't necessarily need more to live a life that I want. I still want more just to prove myself that I'm capable. You know, just like when you're lifting weights, it's like you don't need to be able to bench 300 pounds. Why do you do it? It's just fun to like grow and improve. So I still have that aspect. But it changed in that I saw success. And so I had the ability to be calmer and not freak out and not want it so much. You know, like when you're meeting a girl, treat them mean, keep them keen. I knew some like hot girl. She was one of my good friends. Her name's Carly. And I was like, Carly, I want to meet more girls. What do I do? And she goes, I just treat them mean and I keep them keen. Like the less I want them, the more they want me. It's like a little bit of truth with money. It's like the less I care, the more easily it comes.
Yeah.
It's like a life principle, damn near.
Yeah. And so I'm able to be offensive a lot more.
Yeah.
And I also like realized that I'm friends with all these guys now who have like, Austin's one of my close friends now. And like, I see like the difference of when we sold, I think the year we sold, we could have done about 20 in revenue. And he only sold part of the business, and now they're still running it. And I don't know what they sold. Have they said publicly what the revenue is?
No, I don't think so.
I think last year they did, and it was 75 or something. And I'm like, oh damn, we could have done that too if I just held on. I don't regret selling, but you like see like, damn, if you like things
Where
really
the ceiling could.
yeah, you like things really compound if you do it right. And so I've understood like a long-term perspective, a much longer term timeline. Whereas early on, you're like, I agree, you should have a shorter timeline. Just get it as good as you can.
What about your mindset on competition? And the reason why I ask is, you and Austin and Alex like hated each other, right? And now,
No, I didn't.
Now
hate
you guys are like best buddies.
I didn't hate them personally. I think I told stories to myself to hate them. I always had a ton. It's like
just add some fuel
it's
to
like
the fire.
UFC fighters. Like you may you may dislike them, you may not, but you want to fucking kill them.
Yeah.
It was like that. It was like that type of vibe. I had a lot of respect, but I would if I could, I would crush them in any way I could, or I would hurt them any way I could. Now I have a lot of love and respect for them
because you both won.
Yeah, we all won.
No wonder
we're not competitors, and like I got to know them, and I realized we all have similar values.
Yeah.
Like we're
I mean, no wonder Brad Pitt and Leo are friends, right?
Yeah,
like
right.
they were
That's
probably duking it out for roles, and now they're just like, "You're at the Oscars, I'm at the Oscars."
That's an ambitious analogy, but I'll take it.
Yeah, definitely blown
it's
up.
Probably
a
little
bit.
healthier too. Like, you know what I mean?
You know what I think is interesting about competition is like whenever you think you have a novel idea and like you're executing on it, somebody else came to that conclusion independently in another part of the world.
We didn't know each other. I didn't know that I think they launched before us. I had no idea who they were
isn't
for
that
years.
Just funny? Like while Oppenheimer they were thinking about the nuclear bomb.
The Russians,
the Germans, and the Russians, they're all working concurrently. It's like innovation happens at the same time in different locations with different
or
minds.
it's like the 4-minute mile. Roger Bannister, like a lot of people hadn't done it, and then Roger Bannister did it, and then that same year 4 other guys did it.
It's a crazy phenomenon. It's like the alternate like universe idea.
Yeah. And then, like, once we knew that they existed and they knew we existed, I don't remember when that happened. We definitely, like, I always tease Austin. This isn't probably the truth, but I was like, everything they've done that has worked, they stole from me. Of course, we stole an equal amount. Yeah.
Found inspiration. We'll use that.
Yeah, like, we definitely stole, like, the good parts, and we learned. But we took different paths. They ended up launching tons of newsletters. We weren't going to. We were going to be more verticalized and launch more stuff to a particular audience. I think both would have worked fine. But yeah, they killed it, and now they're one of my close friends. I love those guys.
So I have a question for you about Hampton. You're talking about the longevity of this business, like decades. I think a lot of people joined Hampton to get an association with you because they're like in love with you and you're their hero, like you're so big.
Think
what happens when that fades?
I think you're overestimating that. So I bet most of the people heard about it through me because I've got a megaphone. I interact with so we have many, many hundreds, soon thousands of members. I interact with like very few of them. So, and I'm not even the CEO of the company. I don't even make a lot of the major decisions. So I think you're overestimating my importance of that business. I am basically the TV channel where the ads are. The product is totally different.
Okay.
It is away from me. The reason I wanted to do Hampton was, have you guys heard of YPO?
Yeah.
So that was created in the 50s, in the 1950s. There's another company called Vistage that recently sold for multiple billions of dollars. That is a similar style of business, but
they're like old school. Like they've been around forever.
So they launched in the 60s.
Yeah.
And they've sold like 8 times or 4 times or something crazy. I was really fascinated with brands that could last many, 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 many decades. And I think that this style of company can, with like HubSpot and other software companies, they have to like innovate at a higher rate, as in like AI came out. Okay, they have to like do that. They have to create that and integrate that in their product. With a peer or a membership business or a community, it's a little bit less like where the platform kind of insignificant compared to the value that you provide, and branding is really important, and that's why I wanted to create it.
It's funny that the DNA behind hustle is.
By the way, have you seen our logo and like our colors and stuff?
Yeah.
The way that I came up with that, me and Joe did.
Rolex, right?
We looked at old Rolex and old
Porsche.
Porsche ads. And so Hampton, it's British racing green because I love British racing green.
Great color.
It's a classic car color. It's like the old Jaguars for that.
And Aston Martins.
Yeah, and Aston Martins. It's British racing. It's an old thing. The word Hampton, we came up with that because I used to live next to a street called Hampton Avenue, but I was like, that word sounds like it could last for,
Yeah. I think of Michael Rubin's white party when I hear Hampton.
yeah, it's like an old thing. So we wanted to name it and have the look and feel of something that can last and be timeless. So like,
Timeless.
have you ever looked at like, what's funny is like, what I love doing is looking at like men's fashion over the trailing 100 years.
Yeah.
Like the tuxedo has never changed. Like it's been mostly the same. Men's fashion in general has like been like pretty much similar for like 100+ years. And so I love like finding things where it's like been the same shit for like 100 years because I'm just fascinated by that. And B, it's just easier if you just like kind of nailed some of that stuff. Like it's just simpler.
Well, trends in history also just repeat too, right? Like you go from
But I
baggy
didn't even want a
clothing-
trend. I wanted something that was like always
just timeless.
always timeless. Or
Yeah.
at least I try. Like a Rolex, if you look at like some of the Rolexes, they've almost always been cool. Or like an E-type Jaguar, like that has always been cool, and it will always be cool. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I try to find things like that will last a really long time because it's just easier.
I know you think like that, but again, whenever there's a sexy, exciting launch, right? You look at Threads, you look at Clubhouse, right? Woo, woo, right? So how do you?
Yeah, but not all of them.
How do you sustain? How do you sustain the difference between I get to say I'm in Hampton because it's hot right now versus this is something I want to participate in for the next 10 years of my life?
Well, first of all, we might screw it up. So I don't know the answer yet because I haven't done it. But I think that you have to look at, like, I think Amazon did this where they're like, what will customers always want? They're always going to want cheap prices, fast shipping, and a large selection of stuff. So, like, let's just build our business on top of that. For Hampton, it's like, well, what will people always want? They're always going to want to connect with like-minded people who are of high caliber. And they're always going to want it to be easy. They're always going to want accountability. They're always going to want to feel less alone. So what can we make today that will solve those problems? And then how can we innovate within that framework on a consistent basis to like always make people feel that way, where they always have a sense of community. They're always a little less lonely. Everyone's always of high caliber. So what we do now is I think at Hampton we've had 5,000 or 6,000 people apply. We interview all the people that fit the criteria on paper. So that's like a certain revenue threshold. If they don't have revenue, they have to have a certain amount of funding. Or if they're a new company, they have to at least have sold a company before. They can't be an asshole. It needs to be digital first. And then we also prioritize some cities because it's a little bit easier when you have densities. So like we have those thresholds, and then we interview them to see if they're a threshold, a culture fit. And Joe, my partner, watches every single interview, and he's in charge of approving or not approving them. And so we're keeping that like approval process super tight to make sure they're high caliber. And then tactically, I'm working on like, all right, how do you build communities so they can have 10 or 20,000 members but feel intimate? That's pretty challenging. We have the answer for that, or at least the hypothesis for it. And so I'm working on that now. But yeah, it's fucking hard. It keeps me up at night. Is how do you like make a membership or a community last forever? But there's a lot of people who have done it. What do you know what the best example is the fucking Catholic Church, right? That's 2,000 years old. Like it's done pretty good, right?
You have a lot of fun little yardsticks to measure this against, the E-type and the Catholic Church.
Yeah, I mean, the Catholic
it's
Church.
ambitious, my guy.
Or like, look at where you guys seem like it. I wasn't part of it, but I'm sure you're a part of a frat in Michigan, right?
Yeah, we were both in frat.
How old was that frat? How old is University of Michigan? How old is University of Michigan? I mean,
ours
the
was
high school I
around
went
forever.
to, St. Louis University High School, it was created in 1818.
Yeah, so you really went in on this concept of this should be something that lasts for decades.
Yeah, it's just way easier.
Yeah,
Well,
it's easier.
in Hampton too, you guys segment out by groups, right? So it's
So
like
the way it works is
Yeah.
So what Hampton is, a lot of people call it a community. It's not exactly a community. That is a part of it, but that's not exactly what it is. So the way it works is I kind of call it like business group therapy. So you're the founder of a company. You're looking at your watch. Is this boring?
No, I'm just being cognizant.
All right. The way it works is you apply, you tell us about your company, we match you and put you in a group of 8 people who have similar sized companies and styles of companies. That 8-person core group, you meet with them once a month, and we have an executive facilitator who leads that conversation, and that's where you talk about what's going on in your life and solve problems, and you get intimate with each other. Then we have a digital community where you can talk to all the members, and then we have industry-specific communities. So there's like software, media, whatever, and you could like post a question in there, and like,
And that's the opportunity for me being in media. I could get up to someone who's worth like 100 million, 200 million in media.
or more. Craig Fuller's a community member.
Got it.
He's in the media group.
Yeah.
Pomp is in the media group.
So that's how I can access anyone can access like the top dogs in the community.
Yeah.
Well, here's what I'm interested in. How does the caliber of the conversation change and the insights that are discussed when you go from, say, someone who's still like on the come up, like they're doing well, versus like truly they are like top of class, like they're killing it in their industries?
Well, typically, so like Anon from CB Insights, I don't know what they've said publicly about revenue, but they're probably close to 9 figures a year in revenue.
Sure.
For enterprise sales. So what's that worth? 500 to $1 billion. Andrew Wilkinson's a member, so that he has like a $600 million company. So what the guys who've got our average member has 25 million a year in revenue. So what does the $25 million a year want from the $100 million a year person? They want to see like, what do my next steps look like? How should I think about this as I'm changing my organization, whatever. But the older guys or the more successful guys, what they want from the younger folks is like, what's the latest and greatest?
Yeah.
Trend.
That's why you like hanging out with young people too.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like it's a good trade. Or they're like this guy who's got like this Chrome plugin who's only doing $1 million years in sales. He's growing like crazy through this particular ad channel or something like that. And so that's like the bigger companies are like, well, we have found what works and we're going to exhaust that.
Yeah.
But we need to know like what else is happening.
How much have you noticed the restriction is usually like there's some mental block for someone getting to the next level versus like they just need more time?
Usually it's the second one.
They just need more time.
Well, the mental block is like they have to have the answer right away. It's like, no, man, like
Maybe like an ego thing. They're just like set in their ways.
Well, a lot of times, not every time, but a lot of times, what got you to 20 million could probably, with some minor changes, will get you to 100 million. You just got to add like 5 or 10 years to it. Like whatever's working, it's just like, yeah, just keep doing that. And then once that breaks, make sometimes a big change, most of the time like a small to medium change, and you already know the answer. And so that's one of the reasons Hampton exists, is for like
Yeah.
the 100 million a year person who could like kind of fill that into the $25 million a year person. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
You really are playing your infinite game with this company. You've professionalized those interactions you had at the 12 o'clock mic check into a business. And I think if you can find what lights you up and then professionalize that into a business, that's the infinite game, right?
That's the Ikigai thing.
That's the Ikigai.
Yeah, I talk about that shit all the time. People
Yeah.
think I just talk about it, and they're like, no, dude, I
But
fucking live that.
What I find is interesting is the Ikigai was in the Hustle and it is in Hampton, and there's a lot of times between those
I
businesses.
screwed that up at the Hustle a little
But
bit.
there's a lot of times between those businesses, and that the skill sets you needed on the Hustle are now compounding with Hampton, and
Yeah.
that you're doing this great blog and you're bringing these stories to life of these people, and you're doing the personal brand type element of that stuff. So it's
Yeah.
almost like there's almost like a very similar concept. Almost.
Yeah, I'm just
You're-
packaging it differently.
You're packaging it differently.
We had this thing called Trends, which was cool, but it was
Yeah.
$300 a year, and I was like, oh, I fucked it up. Because when I launched it, I didn't have a lot of money, and I'm like, who pays for $30,000 a year subscriptions? And then I realized, oh, big companies do. The work that we're doing now is like kind of similar to that. If I just packaged it differently, it would have killed it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all like similar. It's just packaged differently and for a different customer.
So you've been through, obviously on a much bigger extent as to like me and Simi, like we sold our business.
How old are you guys now?
24, 23.
23, 24. You know, we want to launch a new business after our time is done, you know, in our acqui-hire. How would you encourage us to go about, and like, I'm almost like envious of people who just stumble into their business idea without knowing they can launch a business. But once you know you can build and scale a business, it's like, I need to find an idea. And my biggest fear is that we pick an idea that we're not truly passionate about, and we're just doing it because it's hot or we can make money
don't
for
do
it.
that. I think that my advice, or what I did and what I would do if I was you, is create like a Notion doc of different categories of styles of companies, and go and research them like crazy and go and interview the founders and be like, hey, you want to come on this podcast? I mean, that's what we did. I had
You got Chief and the Tiger guy.
yeah,
and,
like
they had no idea
I
you were
did it
building
for
their-
everyone.
Yeah, building your competitor.
Yeah,
Then
well,
2 weeks
you're
later,
just
they
like-
find out.
I don't know. We're not competitors to either.
Not yet.
But not yet. But I think what I would do is like first of all, like list out like the life that you want. Like, what's that life look like? What does success defined as? And you want to put like, it's this much money, it's this much in revenue. I work like this. I work with these types of people. Like, I think you should actually put that on pen and paper and like outline what you think is a desirable, like what the life that you want. And then you like list out like, you start at top and then you just get a little bit lower. You're like, I think I like this industry. I think I like this business model. Here's 10 examples of the things that I think are interesting. And I would go and research those like crazy. I would spend a year doing it. I would call them, like if you could, the founders, call the employees,
Yeah.
learn all about it.
Yeah.
And try to like get behind the scenes information to figure out, does that align with what I think I want? Cool. And then all while doing this, you have a vague idea of where the opportunity is. But as you talk to those companies, you could talk to their customers as well. You should. And you like, that will start honing in on the opportunity. And then I think you should call a few more customers and figure like, if you could actually sell them to come to you, but don't actually do it. And it's like, all right, cool. I think I know the go-to-market strategy and what the offering is. Now let me keep researching this other industry, this other industry, this other industry. And it's like, all right, I've done a pretty good job of analyzing everything out there. I think this is the one that we should go in on. Let's go all in on that for like 3 to 6 months and see what happens.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. Now, that is the playbook, I think, if you already have, if you're like, I can't do anything for the next 6, 12, 18 months. I have a little bit of time and money. I want to do something that can last many, many decades. If you're just starting out, I'm like, whatever fucking works, just
Exactly.
run. But if I'm you, that's what I would do, which is like, I kind of I have some experience. I know what my skill is. I kind of know how to do this. I would be very methodical about I call it plotting. You want to plot and scheme. I'm like, I'm plotting. I'm like, in order to like,
don't disturb me. I'm plotting.
Yeah.
I'm plotting. Like this is I'm plotting what the plan. I'm making the plan right now, and that is what I think most people should do. And it's just like you don't get married right away. I mean, sometimes that works, but you typically you want to go on some dates. You want to see what's out there.
Totally.
Like I think you need to plot.
A lot of dating analogies in this podcast.
Well, I was a 21-year-old who like couldn't meet any girls, so I learned how that shit worked. But I think that like you need to like plot a very methodical way.
Great insight. For
And
us.
you like need to write all that shit out. And I think you literally should call them and meet them and figure that out. And you plot. And the plotting part is your job.
Yeah.
Be like, I'm not freaking out. I don't need the answer. I call it worry time. Like from June to January, that's my plotting and worry time.
Love it.
But I don't need the answer right now, though.
Love it.
No, I was gonna say. So there's two things that stick out to me. It sounds like first, like figure out the end outcome you want, right?
You have to do that.
And then work backwards. And then the second thing, and it's funny because I was talking to Eamon, who's the former CEO of AppSumo, and he said something similar, which is like, you want to date an industry. He's like, be very pragmatic. You look at 15 to 20 opportunities that you think could be interesting. And he's like, even just having a conversation with someone in the space.
Exactly.
He's like, you don't have to get all that deep, but he's just like, filter down. Like, that's what you want to do. And that sounds very
That's what
similar
I think
to
you
what
would
you
do.
say.
And then when you find the thing, you punch and you go fucking
then
hard.
intensity.
That's when the intensity wraps, like starts to dial down, and that's when it's like you're a sniper, and you want to get after it, and you say no to everything else.
Yep.
Yeah. What about timing though? Like, if you have 18 months, like us, like if you see something, like, do you believe that opportunities are more or less evergreen?
Do I believe opportunity? No, some are. Yeah,
Some.
not all, but some.
But that's probably what you should optimize for.
9 out of 10 times, I don't think it matters if you're first.
Yeah.
Like whatever exists today, well, the opportunity will very likely also exist in 24 months.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're talking, like let's say I have no idea if this is true. Let's say it's AI. You don't got to freak out. You know what I'm saying? Like just if it's not going to exist in 24 months, it's probably not an interesting concept.
Yeah, that's a good mental framing.
Are you moving to the Midwest or New York? Where are you headed?
When we got married, my wife was like, or when we first started dating, she was like, I'm from New York City. I have to live near my family eventually. So I agreed. So have you guys ever heard of Westport, Connecticut? I went there the other day. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
That's
it's like a
pretty
lot
nice.
of that's
Yeah.
where like the hedge funds are, right? I'm gonna miss Austin, man. I'm gonna miss having you around, and
Austin's cool.
yeah,
It's just so ugly here.
I know.
I miss beauty. I need some type of like physical inspiration
it's
on a
true.
daily
It's true. It's quite ugly.
It's so ugly.
The
way-
city feels repetitive to me too. Like you do the same shit all the
But
time.
I agree. But it is fun and it's easy to live here. Here, I go to the UT Tower because that's where that famous shooting was. Charles Whitman. You know,
Only you would be like obsessed with that.
19, in
You're like
1960s.
feeling the wall.
Well,
It's
it's just
like a
like
blood spatter there.
it's just like a historical thing. You guys don't know Charles Whitman? Was that a weird that I knew who that was? He looks just like me. You know who that is? It's like it was one of the America's first mass shootings. It was like this guy who he had a tumor, but he looked exactly like me. If you guys are watching this, look up Charles Whitman. He like went up
like
to this
the-
tower and he like shot like 20 people, and it's just like famous because it was like one of the periods where America sort of lost its innocence. It's weird. Like when you see a picture of him that he like looks like me, and now I live like next door to it. Here, look, check this out.
Mike, what do you think? Side by side pictures.
I'll do it.
Is this fucked up or what?
Yeah, he looks a lot like you.
It's a little wild. Oh,
But you
boy.
also look like a basic ass white dude. So there's a lot of guys. who
Look at that
like you,
guy.
man. There's a lot of
That could
guys.
be my
in-
cousin, man.
A lot of guys in
You know who he
Kansas who
kind of looked
you.
like from Remember the Titans? The linebacker. I forget what his name was.
I don't know. A lot of
I
people.
think you kind of look like the guy in Friday Night Lights, Landry.
I don't know who that is.
You also kind of look like Bart Simpson.
I look a little bit like Blake Griffin and a lot like Will Ferrell. That's what I say.
Blake Griffin references aren't bad.
No, that's a good one. The Will Ferrell
We're
one's
more
not.
famous than them now. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to our future podcast. Sam, you're the man. Thanks for everything you've done for us, honestly. Like,
Appreciate you.
Well,
whether it was being the arbiter between us and Morning Brew or connecting us with the HubSpot folk, been invaluable to the journey. So,
we guys got to chop this up and give me lots of views.
We'll
yeah.
do.
Always
And
did. Always have. Always will.
we're headed to New York City in a few weeks. If you want to be one of our other first in-person interviews, give us a shout. We'd love to have
Definitely.
you.
Absolutely. Cheers, everybody. Stay frosty.
Stay frosty.
Peace.